So I'm back from PAX East in Boston and just thought I'd share some of my thoughts, as well as my photos and video with you all. It was a real blast, and while I had a ton of fun at last year's, this one was even better. I think a large part of that can be attributed to the much more spacious convention building they had this time. So even though attendance was at an all-time high of nearly 70,000 people, it felt like there was a lot more breathing room this year. The exhibit hall was packed again this year, with tons of companies showing off their latest games, video cards, etc. But I mostly just walked around and looked at stuff. Nintendo had a much bigger presence than last year, with lots of 3DS kiosks and everything from their launch titles like Pilot Wings and Steel Diver to games coming out a little bit later like Zelda Ocarina of Time and Kid Icarus. The line for it, however, was constantly long, and it really felt like I was waiting in long lines enough as it was in PAX, just to get into the panels I wanted to see. So I really didn't feel like waiting an hour to play something that I'd have in my hands in just 2 weeks. But then I noticed that Capcom had 3DSs at their booth too, showing off Super Street Fighter IV 3D Edition and Resident Evil Mercenaries, and there was like no line. I had to wait behind like 2 people to get a chance to play Street Fighter, so it was definitely worth it. The game looked great, and the 3D looked really good. It was kind of funny though, because since the Street Fighter characters are made to look like cartoony, they're not really realistic, it kind of felt like I was looking through a window at like 2 action figures fighting. But like in a good way, I guess, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I later went back to the booth the next day to check out Resident Evil on it, but I guess by that point word had gotten around that they had 3DSs there, because the line had gotten as long as Nintendo's, so I passed. There aren't really vendors at the exhibit hall, but there were like 4 booths in the place that were selling retro games, so I picked up a few small games. I got Legend of Kage and Iron Sword 2 on NES. Iron Sword was complete with box and manual. And Ms. Pac-Man and TMNT Tournament Fighters for Genesis. I've been on the lookout for this version of Ms. Pac-Man because, oddly enough, it features a 2-player simultaneous mode where one player can play as Pac-Man and the other plays as Ms. Pac-Man, so I can't wait to try that out. The tabletop gaming session was much bigger this year, and it was filled almost constantly. I was even down there at 1 in the morning and people were still rolling dice and breaking out board games even then. My friends and I signed up for a quick 2-hour D&D adventure, and just like last year, it was one of the highlights of the convention for me. Nothing like sitting down with some friends and strangers to explore some ruins, fight some goblins, and claim some treasure. Once again, after playing it, I feel like I need to play more, and would really like to get a group together again to do it. We also signed up, but never got in for a session on a new Arkham Horror board game called Mansions of Madness, which looked really fun. My friend Laura ended up buying the game anyway, so I'll let you know how it plays when we get a game going. I made sure to stop in a few times at the Classic Gaming Room, which was filled with people playing all sorts of different games at all times of the day or night. Everything from Atari to Nintendo to Sega were in there. They even had Vectrex you could play. The display on that thing is crisp and bright in person, and it really stood out. Of course, a lot of the other 2-player games were really popular, so things like Double Dragon and Mario Kart and Smash Bros. On N64 were being played. I was lucky enough to be there at just the right time to get a copy of Turtles in Time on SNES, but at 1 in the morning, after getting to the 3rd stage, it was time to call it a night. But I now hunger for more of that game, and I'm on a quest to get it. Besides that, the panels I attended were fun. I hit all the ones that Tycho and Gabe were hosting, caught some of the panels being put on by the 1UP crew, such as a live Retronauts podcast, where they wax nostalgic on 16-bit consoles, and another that was like a video game version of Antique Roadshow, where people brought in stuff that they had, and the 1UP crew talked about it and how much it was likely worth. That was actually a lot more fun than I'd expected, and there were some really cool things that people brought in. Then it was time for the final round of the Omegathon, where 2 teams fought on stage to get the high score at Ikaruga, which was pretty exciting.
Wow, nice work. Nicely absorbed. Oh, he flew too close to the sun. Savage blows. Nice switch. Oh, here comes. Nice switch. That's right.
I'll post the full clip that I recorded of this on YouTube. As always, the weekend was over before I knew it, and it was time to head back. I feel like I'm already counting down the days until the next PAX East comes around, and it's always so much fun and excitement, it always ends too soon. Well, that's it for my quick recount of PAX. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.